welcome to The Art of Being Human. I've been doing a series, and it's lasted for several months now, on the development of the human being from conception through an elderly end of age, and we've covered most of it. I have actually gone into some other things that we deal with on an everyday basis as a part of it, such as adoption and bullying and blended families and things like that we get involved with as we go through our life. And last couple of segments, I've done a lot with intelligence, people who are not average, people who are exceptional. And so now I want to go into creativity as a part of that. If you stop to think of it, it's our creativity that makes life worth living in a lot of ways. Just stop to think. What if you see color, what would life be like if you couldn't see color and everything was in shades of gray? How much joy in life would have been taken away from you just because of that? Or what if you lost one of your senses? What if you couldn't smell? Or what if you couldn't see or hear? Just so, what kind of life would you live? How much would you miss? It's the creativity of the human being, our senses, our being able to taste and smell and see and hear and touch, that helps us to live a full life. And so creativity is a part of all of that. I read about a famous opera singer. I think her name may have been Marie Callas, but I'm not sure, so don't quote me on it. And she is a wonderful singer, and she wanted to share her gift of music with her two children. Unfortunately for her, she has one child that's deaf. They'll never be able to hear music. It is a great disappointment because she will never be able to understand what her mother does. And the other one has cognitive difficulties and just doesn't understand things at all and cannot appreciate beauty or anything that's ethereal, anything that is beyond just the straight and narrow, this is what you do, this is what you see. And so that is a great disappointment to her. But for the most part, we all are creative in some kind of way. So what I want to do is to go into creativity, define it, and then I want to do a section on the artistic development of children. The interesting thing is, and I've said this before when I was doing the development of the human being, people develop in stages, and they accomplish certain things in stages at certain ages. And what's true of the developing human being is true for artistic development too. Children draw in predictable ways. At certain ages, they draw certain things. And it has nothing to do with culture until later on when they're older and they take notice of culture. Children will draw things nationally, internationally, every child drawing about the same thing as their development, physical development proceeds. And then when they get to a certain age, when they're old enough to notice the culture, then they start drawing things that fit in with their own culture, and you start to see a difference in the drawings of children. But for a few years, everything is the same. A child in Russia draws the same thing as a child in the United States at a certain age because that's the developmental pattern. So let's take a look at creativity. What is it? A definition of this, of creativity, could be this: the ability to produce novel ideas, and those with high IQ do very well on creative tests because they have the ability to make connections between things. They have the ability to produce art and music. You stop to think of it. There was a test given on one of the national shows just this morning that I was watching. Would you rather go without, if you had to go without something, would you rather go without sports for a year, watching sports on TV for a year, or go a year without music? And over 67% said they would rather lose the sports than to lose music because they depend upon music, they listen to it all the time, and their preference, if they had to give up one or the other, and according to this test, it was like a survey, which would you rather do if you had to lose something? Lose the sports for a year and not watch sports, or lose music and not be able to listen to music for a year? overwhelmingly, people decided that they would rather have the music and drop the sports. So let's take a look at creativity. There are 5 components of creativity that we have to take into consideration. For one thing, the person who's creating has to have some knowledge, so they have to have expertise. That base of knowledge helps them to create. They have to have imaginative thinking. They have to be able to see things in new ways, to see things outside of the box, to create things that are new and different that other people might not think of, but they have the ability to think of it. So imaginative thinking. They have to be venturesome. That is, they may have to make obstacles and overcome obstacles to be able to do what they want to do, but they have the wherewithal to be able to overcome what obstacles they reach and create despite the obstacles. They have to have motivation. They have to be interested in learning, and they have to enjoy the challenges of creativity. Now, I know a lot of musicians. I'm a musician myself, and they all enjoy just getting together and playing together, which we call jamming. And I can remember after rehearsals, musicians getting together, myself included, getting together just to play. We could create melodies, we could write music, we did all kinds of things. And I've been to conferences where you are taught how to write music. There is a way to do that. So you have to enjoy the challenge, and you have to have creative ideas. You have to be able to network with people. You have to be able to have friends that are involved in artwork too. You can appreciate what they're doing. They can appreciate what you're doing. It's like a whole different subculture in itself. You know, we don't just get up in the morning, brush our teeth, have our breakfast, and we're off for the day. Usually, if we're creative, we do a lot more than that. We do things that we like. We do things that we're passionate about. And so, therefore, things get started. Creativity happens. Some people write books. Some people do photography. Some people do artwork. Some people do music. So it's a life of creativity. Without this creativity, our lives would be duller. They wouldn't be as rich as they are. So I think that we need to be very careful that we don't cut out music and sports and other creative things that go on in the school system. I know I have a niece that can't take music lessons anymore because they couldn't afford music, so they cut it out of the program, and she really wanted to learn to play an instrument. So now she has an instrument that she's playing, but no one's teaching her how to count timing or anything like that, because there's no set thing that has to be done in the school system to provide for music for those who want it. Usually the sports is kept, but the music is dropped, or the art is dropped, and that's not right either. Not everyone's going to be a sportsman, but all people are going to create in some kind of way. And I believe that people are creative naturally, and that everybody has a gift to create something, and we just would like to take a look at it and see what that is. I want to mention eidetic and auditory imagery. That's important in artistic endeavors, because if you can hear something, like for example, if I'm going to write a piece of music, and I usually do it for my music show, I have to be able to hear in my mind what that's going to sound like. And a lot of times when I'm just waking up, a melody comes to me. The whole thing comes to me, not in parts, but the whole thing. And I listen to it in my head, and I know what I want it to sound like, and I know the instrument I want to play it on. I have to figure out what key it's in, and I start writing the music. The auditory imagery is that you can hear things as they would be if you created them. I mean, they may not be in existence, but you can hear what they would sound like if they were in existence. And this is important for composers and people who deal with auditory kinds of things. Then you have the eidetic imagery, where you can see what things look like in your mind if they were created. Or an architect, they can see in their mind what a house would look like, what a building would look like, how they would arrange the rooms in the building, how they would arrange the lawn space and the trees and the plants and so forth. and they actually can, in their mind, see this, even though it's not an accomplished fact yet. So it's important, if you're creative, to be able to imagine or see, or in your mind hear, what things will look like and be like once they're created, because you're going to be the one to create what you hear in your mind. I had one person that I counseled. I've only had one person who had no imagery at all. He could close his eyes and I could say tree, and he couldn't picture a tree in his mind. Most people, if they take the simple test, if I say tree or chair and your eyes are closed, in your mind you can conceive of what the chair looks like, what the tree looks like. Nobody's tree will look like anybody else's tree. It might have pink flowers on it, it may have no flowers on it, it may be an evergreen, it might be an oak loaded with leaves, but it's still a tree. Or if I mention the word chair or table, people can envision in their mind what the chair, excuse me, and what the table look like. They have their own conceptions of that. That's imagery. They're able to see it. Or if I say a trombone playing, they can in their mind conceive what the trombone is going to sound like, even though it's in their mind and it isn't actually occurring. But this poor gentleman couldn't see anything. When he was awake, oh yeah, that's a chair. I mean, there's nothing wrong with his IQ. This is a chair, this is a table, this is a tree, and it's not a problem. But when he closed his eyes, there was no imagery. All he saw was black space. And that's it. But most people, when you tell them something, what would it look like if I had a group of white flowers on a table? Well, it would look maybe like this. Or in your mind's eye, you might have a different kind of flower, white flower on the table. Or if I said, if you have colored flowers, what do the colored flowers look like in your mind? And with their eyes closed, they can describe, well, I've got pink, I've got red, I've got this, I've got roses, I've got daisies, and everything that they can think of. That's the imagery that most people have. And we harness and use that imagery when we create. Now, what I want to do is go into the artistic development of children. Just like adults, we have developed in certain stages, children artistically develop in certain stages as well. And this is what I really want to go into for this segment. The artistic impulse is universal. And children draw the same things at the same ages because it's dependent upon their developmental stages. It's not dependent upon culture when they are very young. So the development of art is the same worldwide. And if you have a 3-year-old drawing a box, it's going to, in Russia or in China, it's going to look like a 3-year-old drawing a box in the United States. It's worldwide. So a lot of these stages of development and the progression of the artistic impulse in children is the same for everybody worldwide. And when you were a child, you did the same things. Now, a child's drawings are not precise. They don't have a plan. When they're very young, they scribble. About age 2, they scribble. But they don't have a plan. Supposing they're at the stage where they're drawing boxes and squares and circles and things like that, then do they have a plan? How do they draw this, or how do they draw that? How do they draw a dog? How do they draw their pet cat? There's no plan. If you ask a child, what are you drawing? They're likely to say, I won't know until I'm finished. I don't know what I'm drawing, or words to that effect. Then later on, when they get more developed, by 4 or 5 years old, they do have a plan. They want to draw a house, or they want to draw a dog, and they can draw squares and triangles and rectangles and some basic forms. Now, you've got to remember that children don't have fine motor skills, so a circle is not going to really look like a circle. It's going to be jagged. It's not going to be even all the way around because their development does not allow them those fine motor skills when they're young. When they get older, they get better at it, and the drawings look more and more realistic. So it'll be an interesting study. Scribbling, they start off with scribbling, and that is a basic art form. And believe it or not, there are 20 different types of scribbles that children use. Now, I have not brought in samples of 20 types of scribbling because to us, a scribble is a scribble, but that's how they start out with. And they don't start out with any basic plan, as I said before. At age 3, the child starts to do basic shapes like squares, triangles, rectangles, circle, his own version of them, various basic shapes. And then around age 3 to 5, they combine shapes. They might have a square with a circle inside of it or something like that. And they use that to start drawing what they see. So we're going to kind of get into that. They may stick to their own favorite forms. They may like drawing circles better than they like drawing squares, so they're drawing circles a lot. If you ask them what they're doing, until they're older, they don't really know. They just enjoy doing these different art forms. So around age 5, a child starts to develop their own artistic style. I can remember as a young child, when I was in elementary school, the teachers used to comment on my style of drawing. Now, I don't remember what was different about it because I was young, I didn't pay any attention, but they noticed that my style of drawing, I had a definite style, but children develop different styles of drawing, and it starts about age 5. And then, and also around age 5, you can't tell the difference between a girl child's drawing and a boy child's drawing. Girls and boys draw about the same at the same age. There's no sex differences that you can pinpoint by age 5, but they're beginning to develop a style of art by age 5. So the child scribbles at age 2, and then they also start to develop something called figure and ground, where they understand that there is such a thing as figure and ground. Now, I want to get into that a little later. That's a little bit more complex, but just to define it, if you are looking at a television and in your home, and you're sitting in front of the TV and you're watching the TV becomes figure. That's what you're paying attention to, is the TV. That's figure. Ground is everything else that fades into the distance. Supposing, as you're watching television, somebody comes to your door and raps on your door. Now, the TV may become ground because your attention is fixed on who's at the door and opening the door to the person that's there. So it shifts. Whatever you're paying attention to is your figure, and everything else is background. If you are studying, and you're studying for a test, your figure is the book or whatever it is you're studying from, your notes, your books, your lab reports, whatever it is that you're studying from. You may have music on, or you may have a radio blaring somewhere. That becomes ground. You kind of tune it out. You may be dimly aware that it's there because you can hear something, but you're not focused on it. You're focused on studying for your exam. So the figure and ground will switch back and forth depending upon what you're paying attention to. Children start to understand that, according to what I've read, at about age 2 to 3. I actually think it's later than that, because age 2 or 3, they're still kind of in the scribbling stage. By age 5, I think they have more of an understanding of what figure and ground is, but they wouldn't have the verbal skills to be able to describe it. They wouldn't be able to say, well, this is figure, this is ground, but they can experience it. I'm drawing a dog. The dog may be a square with 4 circles for the legs, you know. They may do something like that, very primitive, but that's at their stage of development, and that's their dog. A car may be a box, maybe a square with 2 wheels on it, something like that. That to them is their figure. Everything else, trees and anything else, they don't think in terms of placing what they're drawing in a setting. You know, like if you have a car, well, maybe you need to know that the car is on the road, and in the distance are mountains, and there are clouds in the sky and trees by the side of the road. They don't think in terms of settings. This is a car, it's a square with wheels on it, that's it. But that's still the beginning of figure and ground training. By age 3, the child can draw basic shapes. These basic shapes will include, but they're not going to look precise because of the lack of motor skills, but this is going to include circles, ovals, squares, rectangles, triangles, X's, and crosses. And they may combine them, and they may mix them all together, and this is really the beginning of their artistic work. Around age 4 to 5, children start to draw pictures. It's not just an object, but they draw pictures. And the pictures will include, in terms of rough drawings, once again, humans, animals, trees, and various objects. Eventually, they are more easily recognizable, and you can distinguish, this is a dog, this is a cat, this is a car. But to begin with, it's indistinguishable because they do not have the skills to be able to separate. This is a dog and it doesn't look like a car, so they mix things up. But that comes with age, and that comes with just learning how to draw. Young children are not concerned about how realistic their drawings are. One little girl said, "I'm going to draw God." And the mother said, "How can you draw God? Nobody knows what God looks like." And the little girl said, "They will when I'm finished. They'll know what he looks like when I'm finished." She thought she was drawing God. It was just a scribbling kind of thing. But, you know, this is the way art gets started, and this is the way children perceive. They can't be realistic because they don't have the physical skills to be realistic. So a human might be a circle with arms coming out of it, out of the circle, and little stick legs, and it doesn't look very human, but that's the part of the development that they're at. Basically, they're drawing for fun, and realism is not very important. Now, the first human figures are round and the arms sprout out. And it's important that a child be allowed to draw what they want to draw and what they're feeling and not try to constrain them. I know that the argument is do children have to color in the lines if they're using a coloring book, or can they color outside of the lines? What difference does it make? It doesn't make any difference. It's their choice because it's a sign of where they are developmentally. And the child cannot draw perfect circles or anything. So what I want to do, by age 6 or 7, they'll draw complete pictures, people, cars, trees, all of it. Now, it may not look all realistic, but that's what they're doing. They're doing pictures, and the art is more recognizable. I want to, we only have 4 minutes left, so what I think I'm going to do is close it here, and starting with the next, I'm going to show you pictorially by showing art pieces and things like that, what children are doing in their artistic performances, what they're doing in terms of how things look to them. And I think I don't want to start it right now because we don't have that much time left, and it's going to take some time to show you all the artwork which I have brought. So we'll close it here, and I'll show you pictures and drawings and sketches and things that children normally do during the next segment. So we'll close it here. Please join me next time.